Hi there! Welcome to the ALLS YouTube channel. This week's episode features Dr. Didith Rodrigo, head of the Ateneo Laboratory for Learning Sciences, a full professor at the Department of Information Systems and Computer Science at the Ateneo de Manila University, as well as the president-elect of the Asia-Pacific Society for Computers in Education. Dr. Rodrigo attended a hybrid seminar where half of the attendees participated on-site while the other half participated online. In this ALLS lecture entitled A Description of the Hybrid Classroom, Dr. Rodrigo describes how the seminar room was set up, how the proceedings were conducted, what technology tools were used, and what support was made available. Eager to learn more? Please continue watching.
Let me start. This lecture is divided actually into two parts. So one is just the first part is my experience report, if you want to call it that. And the second part, because I don't think I'm going to occupy 1 hour, and the second part is really I hope that we here in this room can share our own thoughts or experiences, ideas, or maybe questions about the hybrid classroom. This is a reality that we're all confronting. In fact, many of you might already be teaching in a hybrid mode. So I think that there is expertise in this room that we can share with each other. I do have some disclaimers. First is that this report is not supposed to be comprehensive, so I'm not about to tell you all possible realities using in the hybrid setting. That I don't make any claims like that. It's one experience. It's just an example, and I'm sure that there are others out there. Okay, first the context. This is early this month, from January 30 up to February 2. I was in a seminar in SCHLOS, which is the Leibniz Center for Informatics. It is located in Germany, in Saarland. Okay, and it is the SCHLOS was founded in 1990. It's a non-profit. It's funded by both the German federal and state government. It is a meeting center specifically for computer science and informatics research. They also maintain the bibliographic services. If you're in computer science and you've heard of the DBLP, computer science bibliography, they're the ones who maintain it. I actually have a video to show you about the outside of the schloss. So this gives you that. So this is the outside of the building, and so you can see that it's far out in the countryside, and it's actually quite far away from everything. So the whole point is to sequester the participants, so you don't start shopping and going to bars and stuff like that. There's really, if you don't have a car, it's a long walk to the next town. All right. Why am I mentioning all of this? I'm mentioning all of this because hosting meetings is the core business of the SCHLOS. And this is what they do. This is what defines their existence. And also that the people who participate in these seminars are computer science and informatics people. So these are people who are very comfortable with technology. And so what you're going to get is probably, from this description, I would say, the best case scenario that is possible at this time. Okay, so this gives you an idea. This is how our rooms were set up. You notice that the chairs were spread out, and it was and then we had a limited number of participants. For this particular seminar, we were supposed to be 30. There were 12 who actually made it on site. The others joined remotely. Two of the organizers tested positive for COVID the day before they were supposed to fly out to go to Germany. And so this is why you know if any of you have taken a plane or any kind of public transportation that requires you to take a PCR test prior, like 24 hours prior to boarding, uh, this is exactly why the PCR tests are necessary. Because in the case of these two organizers, they were they tested positive for COVID when they actually took the test. So if they hadn't taken the test, they wouldn't have known that they were COVID positive, and so they weren't able to fly out. So this is how the tables and chairs were set up. Um, and you'll notice this is the room from the perspective of the lecturer. What's all the things? What are all the things in the on the tables? These are actually antigen tests. So there was a requirement in the schloss that we test ourselves every other day. And so you come into the seminar room, and there's a test waiting for you. You take your test, and there is somebody. I didn't take a picture of the uh,
Wala, sir. Ibutang, kailangan ako ni
sorry, Jess, is it okay? I'll make you co-host. Mm, Um, all right. The yeah, we there was somebody in the room with us while we were taking the test, and so you couldn't like cheat. Yeah, I mean, not that you would want to, but there you took the test in front of him, and he checked. He checked. If you were positive, then I'm sorry. If you were negative, then you were free to go. If you were positive, then they have a protocol for that. Okay. Now, the top of the room in the pink circles, there were mics. There were mics that were dropped from the ceiling, and there was a grid of these mics all over the room, so that people who were in the room who wanted to say something could be heard by the people who were online. And that's a close up of what the mic looked like. We had probably 20 of these all over the room. Also, at the back of the room, there was a camera that was facing the backs of the participants. There was also a camera facing us, but in front and back. Um, and there were two screens. So there's one screen that always had the participants who were on Zoom, and there was another screen that had whatever the presentation was. So this is the front view. This is what the Zoom participants saw of us in the room, and from the front, and this was the view from the back. And you notice that this guy is facing the camera because he was actually presenting, trying to say something. The only this is me here. um, the the thing about the mics that are dropped from the ceiling is that you have to speak very loud. You can't speak in a normal at a normal volume. For the people on the Zoom call to hear you, you really have to raise your voice. So you have to speak quite loudly. So, okay. While the seminar was going on, there were several Slack channels, and one of them was current session. So all the you could, if you had any comments, questions, you could raise your hand and speak, or you could type them in the Slack channel. And so there were like several conversations going on at the same time. There was a lot of support available. There were two assistants, one who was on site in the room with us, and one who was purely online. The on-site assistant helped set up the equipment, so she was the one who connected the lapel mics to the speakers who were presenting on site. She was also the one who made sure that the mics were turned on and off because you can't leave the mics on all the time, as you know. And then if there was somebody in the room who wanted to say something, then it wasn't always visible to the people on the Zoom call. So the assistant was on site, had to raise her hand in the Zoom room to make the speaker on the Zoom call um, know that there was somebody who wanted to say something. The online assistant was the one who made sure that the right speaker was spotlighted or pinned, and then the online assistant was the one who also kept time. So we had to follow a very strict schedule. This was Germany after all, and the Germans are quite strict. Um, all right. The typical session was your presenter presents, whether online or in person, and then the participants raise their hand to ask questions. You can react or comment on the Slack channel. And then there were also Google Docs that were shared so that if you what's this? If you if you wanted to have like participation, you could, or if you wanted to create like a shared document, um, then everybody contributed to the Google Doc. So sometimes the presenters would pose a question to the group, and then would say that instead of typing in the Slack channel, here's a Google Doc or here's a Google Sheet. Type your answers here. Like, and some of the questions required a lot of thought. Like when the seminar ended, they were asking like for ways forward. What do you think the interesting questions are, and who would you like to work with, and who would like to work with you, and so you have to list all those things on a Google Sheet. Okay. There were also small group discussions where questions were fielded out to participants, and we were asked to break out into small groups. And then afterwards, there was reporting. So this is very typical of what we do anyway. So next question. So what is it that worked well? There was an the discussion was extremely free flowing, which was really nice because you also have to remember that this was a pretty senior group, meaning there were a lot of the participants were not young people. They were people probably in their late 30s to 50s. I don't think I was the oldest person there. And so these are people who, were pretty senior in the field. And there were some like postdocs or doctoral students as well. And everybody was quite participative. So it's not a group of very shy undergraduates who look down when you ask questions. These are people who were quite active, and so it was nice that they would respond. They were very responsive to questions, and they very actively participated in the discussion. The Slack channel was also useful because it you were able to capture not just the sort of content related questions, but there were also funny remarks, side comments that added a little levity because the content was kind of heavy. So you needed a little sort of break in the you needed some break in the tone. Okay, the assistants were essential. You could not live without them because we could have figured out how to set up mics and stuff. It's just that it would have taken longer. And since we were already on a tight schedule, there really wasn't a lot of time to spend on figuring out the tech. So like one of the speakers didn't know how to share the sound of her Zoom call. And so, so one of the assistants really just sort of sorted her out very quickly. And yeah, I mean, things like that. You can't afford to waste that kind of time. Incidentally, the sessions would begin at 8:30 in the morning and they would end at 9:30 at night. So they really made the most of our doing that. Okay. What was it that was difficult? Okay, the small group discussion was actually really difficult because you couldn't the people on site tended to group together, the people online tended to group together. It was very hard to have a breakout room where you had people on site and people online. And I mean, if you think about it, diba? If you're all online, then you go to a breakout room in Zoom. If you're all on site, then you just literally have a breakout room and you look for a place to sit quietly and talk. If you're kind of in a mixed mode, then you might as well all be in Zoom so that you can go into a breakout room. And but if you have one person on site and two people in Zoom, then the one who's on site might as well just go on Zoom. Or if you have two people on site and one person in Zoom, ganun din. The two people who are on site might as well just be on Zoom so that everybody can talk level playing field. Okay, so that was difficult when with the hybrid. Then the online group tended to dominate. Why? Because they were always on screen and they were always on speaker. So whenever they said something, everybody could hear it, and so whereas we who were on site, if you wanted to say something, you really had to raise your voice. And so I think all of us also had this mentality, and perhaps you feel it as well. When something's happening on the screen, your attention is diverted to the screen. So I think there's some of that going on. So there was this clear sort of, in terms of balance of power in the classroom, there was a clear advantage to being online. So the people who were in the Zoom call tended to be privileged in that regard. Also, it was really difficult to pay attention to so many channels at the same time, because you had people on the Zoom call, you had the presenter slides, and then you had the Slack channel. So talagang you were constantly sort of rotating among these three. And that's not even counting the person next to you who might be saying something to you. So, you had to manage all these different. Okay. So how might this work for us? I was trying to give this some thought, because definitely not all of us have access to this level of technology in our classrooms. One of the things that I noticed was having the front and back cameras was really advantageous, because you could really keep an eye on what was going on in your classroom, more or less. If you're the presenter who is helping to present online, you can kind of gauge at least sort of gross reactions, so big scale reactions. Maybe not so much micro reactions, but at least you can kind of tell if people are paying attention. And then we might be able to do this with webcams. So if you have webcams like at the front of the class and the back of the class, that might be workable. Also, we can't all have two assistants in the room with us, but maybe we can enlist the help of our students, because that's another thing that the assistants did. They did keep an eye on the Slack channel. So if there are questions that popped up on the Slack channel that the speaker didn't address, they could they could raise it up and say that so and so asked this question, blah blah. Now, I don't know how to do the microphones. I really don't, because if you have people on site and they want to say something, how will they be heard? Short of walking up to the teacher's computer and talking into it. So I'm not sure, but maybe you have ideas. And incidentally, just so you know, the SCHLOS is hiring. They have software developer, doctoral student, and computer science slots available. Those of you who are in computer science and who want to live and work in Germany, FYI. I think that's my last slide. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing. And what I wanted to do is to just sort of open the floor for the group to just find out if you had any questions you want to ask, or experiences that you want to share. Because, yeah, I mean, as I said, this isn't supposed to be me trying to be an expert about these things, because I'm not. this was really just one experience, but I thought it was worth sharing because I felt like, as I said, it was probably the best we could have done, the upper bound for what is possible, and you might have different experiences that are worth sharing. Any question? Um, so I'm going to put people on the spot. Mark, are you there? Hi.
Hi, Didith. Hi, everyone.
Yeah. This is so I was wondering if you had any experiences that you could share with from your work at Beacon.
Well, we're about to start actually. So I work in a school called Beacon Academy, and like I think everybody, we're trying to move towards some kind of hybrid or high flex learning. In the school. So my school is located in Laguna, which means the alert level just dropped. So I'm finally able to bring people back to campus starting this week. What in terms of the technology? In terms of the technology, I mean, Didith mentioned the things like microphones and all of that, but the setup that we're using is we're actually using condenser microphones. For the classroom, so that it can capture. And we tested a few prototypes. It actually can capture, the speakers in person and quite well without having to go to the. But it did require the investment of a condenser microphone. Best if it's suspended from the top because of the audio throw. In terms of the cameras, again, we went back and forth. Other international schools have actually ventured into this already. Some were iPad based. So in another international school, the camera within the on-site class is actually an iPad controlled by the teacher, so that he or she can determine the angle that the online class is actually seeing. Feedback from that, however, is that it's quite difficult because the teacher's attention is so divided in terms of this, and I think that's one of the challenges that we've heard from our my counterparts in other schools, and one of the challenges we're trying to figure out also in Beacon, not so much for the students but actually for the teachers, because and I think there were studies that came out in Europe on this last year where in hybrid classes there's always one group that's privileged. And the hard part is trying to actually figure out how to do that. Right now, the direction we're taking in Beacon is, we necessarily have to, I think, meet the needs of people who will not be able to go to campus for one reason or the other. But it also, we feel that it actually might be a matter, not so much of the technology, but how to actually teach the class. Mm-hmm. So one of that is in terms of like designing, for example, following the blended model of station rotation, which is in a 3-hour class, you literally divide the class into stations per hour, so that 1 hour or one chunk of time is exclusively devoted for the online participants. One would be, for example, moving away from more lecture-based to more exercise-based learning experiences, and then combining that so that you're not replicating a normal lecture class with a hybrid setup. I think that's how we're kind of moving with this right now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. Yeah, they're having the cameras that kind of swivel seems to be a common thing, because that I've seen. So I saw it here, and then I saw it in another classroom in the Netherlands. But you're right. The teacher has to be very deliberate about where to position the camera and who to aim at and stuff like that. So yeah, there's that sort of added load in classroom management, I guess. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. I see Raul from ADU, from Ateneo de Davao. Raul, are you there?
Hello, Doc Didi. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
Raul.
Long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, long time.
So,
Ano, how are you? How are things in ano naman, ADU? What are the preps you're making for the hybrid model or mag-hybrid na kayo?
yes po, Doc Didi. That's why I attended this lecture, no, in terms of sa hybrid learning, because that's a very, I would say, a lot of different opinions in regards to our hybrid classroom setup. Because in Ateneo, they had integrated a lot of technologies in the hybrid classroom setup. So the standard microphone setup was there, the camera, similar to what was discussed earlier. But they've integrated a lot more technologies like a graphics, a drawing tablet, for example. And then and actually there were 4 outputs that they have in the hybrid classroom setup. So I have a question, Ma'am Didith, in terms of this. When can we say that it's really too much technology in regards to hybrid classrooms? That's something that we are discussing. Attending here as well is the aerospace department chair of Ateneo de Manila University, and we have been discussing this. When can we say that it's too much technology in regards to our implementation of hybrid classroom?
Yeah, I think it starts because I would what are the activities that you want to support, diba? If you want to support, let's say, lecture, small group discussion, or what Mark was saying about the station rotation, then you need the technology for that. Now, you might not need to use all the technology all the time sabay-sabay. Baka naman, if yeah, there might be some technologies you can turn off on certain occasions. Like for me, actually, during this, so this was a 3-day seminar that I, 3.5-day seminar that I attended. I felt like the Slack channel was just, whoa, it was so hard to monitor because I couldn't pay attention to what was being said and then look at the Slack channel at the same time. Kasi ang dami-daming, parang everybody who had any kind of side comment, whether related or not, or tangentially related, yun, nilagay sa Slack. So talaga after a while, you just can't pay attention to it. So I just stopped looking at it and I just depended on the assistant to flag if there was something very relevant. So ganon, parang yeah, I get what you mean that there might be too much. Pero I think it starts with what are the activities that you want to support, what types of interactions do you want to support. Kung sa tingin niyo tama na, tama na. Tapos yun nga, don't be afraid to turn off some of them if they're getting to be too much. Diba? So, pero kuminsan nga napapasobra.
Correct. I would like to add, Ma'am Didith, kasi for when we were evaluating it, when we went there for demonstration, someone from our academic office demonstrated it. It's really distracting, in terms of and given that what you indicated earlier is that even you had your Slack, you had this screen, it becomes so distracting if there's a lot of things going on, no?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if there are around 3 outputs or 4 outputs that you would need to monitor as a teacher, I'm not so sure if that would a teacher be able to facilitate that amount of outputs, computer output screens that for classes.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make sense out of this procurement of equipment.
Yeah.
So
Understood. Yeah. But I think we also, that's what I was saying, I think we have to enlist the help of our students also. Because baka every session you need to have one student who is assigned to help you with something. But although I don't know, that it might not be fair to the student also, na they won't be able to really pay attention to certain things. But maybe there's ways to do that. Sige, thank you so much, Ru. Is Min, are you there?
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. So Min Lagod is from Holy Spirit.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
yeah, can you say something about how Holy Spirit is preparing?
Actually, ma'am, I just came from a meeting because we were discussing how we will go about next school year. And because we have limited um, resources at the moment, so what we're thinking about is we first try to have an alternating schedule wherein we will have some weeks where students will go online, and then the other week would be when they will work on their work. When they will work on their load at home probably, and then eventually as we progress probably we will be able to acquire resources for us to also have simultaneous classes. However, ma'am, with the drop of the COVID cases, do you think that we will still, it is still recommended that we really push the having the hybrid classes, ma'am? Or what do you think about the current situation of the health of our country?
Kasi as of now, di ba nga, when you're even exposed to somebody with COVID, you're asked to isolate. So even if, isolate for mga 5 days, di ba? So I guess to be fair to those people who need to isolate just to prevent the spread, we have to find a way to make some kind of accommodations. It's just that, yun nga, parang yung tanong, what is the, how do we teach under these circumstances, and what's the kind of most fair? So one of the things that you could do is, if it's not possible to have the simultaneous classes, you record and then make the materials available. But that in itself is also challenging. At saka kung minsan, it's hard to listen to 4 hours worth of lecture. And then if you can't also participate in certain activities like after small group discussion or breakouts or whatever, then. Dom, Dom, go ahead and unmute your mic if you want to say something.
Hello. Oh, sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, maybe if like, for example, the teachers could decide, what kind of system do they think they'll be able to achieve their learning objectives? Do they want to see or envision? That could probably help them decide on what technologies are actually contributing for them to achieve their goals. Kasi parang, I feel the stress in thinking about, okay, we have so much technology available and willing to procure or integrate. Pero I think we're always guided by supposedly our learning outcomes intended and what works already. Parang remembering that, and parang I know it's exciting, no, ma'am, whenever we have new apps and other things to integrate. It is exciting, and we experienced that when our teachers were developing their online class modules for Minecraft. But then we always ask the question, but what is your learning objective or learning outcomes intended? So maybe, just sticking really to that, anchoring on that, going back to that when we feel kind of like too excited for everything. Ayan, ma'am. That's what.
Thanks, Dom. But yeah, when I think I don't. I think the reason why I really tried to learn as much as I could from that hybrid setup was because I feel like we don't have a choice. I feel like papunta na tayo dun, and we don't, whether we like it or not, we won't have a choice but to kind of adjust to it, if only to be as inclusive as possible to our students. But yeah, but the situation of under-resourced schools is difficult kasi na if you don't have all the equipment available. There might be yun nga, parang less expensive ways to do it. So if you have well, Mark was mentioning using iPads, but you could use a tablet, I suppose, or you can use some other device with a webcam, even a cell phone with a webcam. Yung problema lang is sound, because I don't know how good I mean, you could put a mic on the teacher, but the sound from the students might be more difficult to capture. So yun, I mean, yeah, there might be cheaper ways to choose. But I'd be interested to find out what everybody decides. Find someone else. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Jess, did you want to say something about what we're doing at Ateneo?
Me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, a hybrid setup in the works, yes, and I really a little bit. I do feel that it's going to be quite overwhelming to manage a hybrid classroom. Because even just managing a Zoom classroom is already like even just managing, remember to look at the chat and look at the questions and the private messages. It's already quite it takes a lot of attention and energy. So I'm actually a little. I feel like the hybrid setup will always have. But it would be an expectation that one group might be more left out in the experience.
Yeah.
So I think it's the challenge of the hybrid, because if you're in the classroom, you will focus on the people that are there and you'll forget about the people who are online, and putting everything together just seems really challenging. And I'm waiting to see what those who are doing the hybrid now will experience, because we just started this week.
Yeah.
For the few classes that we do have on site in a rotation schedule as well. So, but currently some of our students are still in that situation where they have limited connectivity. I still have a student now who is still badly affected by the last typhoon. He still doesn't have electricity until now, so he's kind of getting left behind. And so we don't know what will happen. We don't know how many more calamities there will be, and if the students who are restricted to staying online, how do we make sure that we also keep them on track?
Yeah. For students like that, couldn't we bring them in and put them in the dorm?
Yeah, I think it's an option now, because they're slowly also opening up the dorms, but of course now in the transition period, it's still very strict. Now, if you're going to stay in the dorm, you really just stay there. You can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And if you step outside the dorm, it's like really going out, even if it's just to go to class.
Right.
So yeah, I think from an administrative point of view, I think it's a discussion to be had, to not just, because usually you already have people who are expected to be in the dorms, and these other students are probably not among them. So it's a different consideration.
Thanks, Jess. So, Rahul, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Yes, Doc Didith. I'm just curious about how Ateneo de Manila is. What are Ateneo de Manila's plans in terms of your learning setup or hybrid learning? Is it like implemented via individual units or departments, or is there a blueprint or suggestion coming from much higher administration, like the academics, in terms of what would be the setup of the classrooms or the laboratories for hybrid or online learning?
Yeah, there was actually there is an office in charge of what I think it's called flex learning. So the Gokongwei Brothers School of Education is taking the lead, and they've established like recommended protocols for how to conduct a hybrid class. And they've taken the faculty through a few of these parang sessions where they describe it, and it's ano kasi, it's things like how do you I mean it gets down into pretty into detail. No? I mean they talk about like you start your class with a motivation, then you have like 15 minutes of some kind of lecture, and then you have an activity where you do whatever Padlet or Jamboard or whatever. And then, but I mean, they offer these as models, not to say that everybody should do it the same way, but it's like uh, it's an example that people can look at and then modify. Sorry, hindi ko 100% kabisado yung lahat ng advice nila. Pero yeah, there was a group that was established to thresh out possible ways. But the technical part of it, that one I don't recall. I don't know if yeah, I don't know if Jess has more info on that. I'm sorry,
The
Jess.
only thing I have is there's like a slide deck that kind of diagrams what it would we're using different terms kasi we're using flex, we're using hybrid, and the definition of those things is so it depends on the mix na parang if you are hybrid, is it one group on site, one group online, or is it 1 week everyone's online, the next week everyone's off site? So on site and so on. So I think there's a lot of there's definitions to it. I'm just looking for the document, but I can't seem to find it at the moment. So yeah, there's but there's no like mandate. There's an option. So at our level, it was a matter of are your classes going to be purely online? Are your classes going to be hybrid? Are your classes going to be flex? And even then, when a student enrolls for a specific type, a specific class, regardless of which model they're using, they always have the option to stay online because of, the current conditions. So there's still that choice of flexibility, and that's.
I see Ranji Obispo from Xavier University in Cagayan de Oro. Ranji, are you there? Hi, Ranji.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, did you want to start?
I was disconnected at the middle of the discussion.
Oh, that's okay. I was wondering if you could share some of the experiences in XU. What are you doing for flex or hybrid?
Actually, now we are still at least for our college, for our department, we are doing the full online. But there are other colleges who have started to implement limited face-to-face. But actually, I'm not really familiar with how they implement this one. But I could see a lot of students already in the campus, which is actually a good sight. For our online, at least on my end, I just meet the students around 6 times for the course orientation. One for each module. I have 4 modules usually for the synthesis, and for the entire course synthesis, so that's the 6th one. And but I tried my best to record my presentation so that at least that would be a substitute for our supposed synchronous session. And we actually compressed for example, if the course is really cited for the whole sem, we have divided the entire semester into 2 quarters. So medyo hectic talaga yung schedule. So a course would run for around 2 months. That's 2.5 months, something. It's around 9 weeks. So yeah, it's actually a struggle, but I don't know, students are more struggling, I think. But yeah, synchronous sessions are really helpful, but I don't know. It's a good number if I have 50% of the students present during the synchronous session. Yeah, we use Google Meet, but unfortunately, recently Google removed the recording feature, so we were forced to use MS Teams instead. But yeah, there are some technical problems with MS Teams. But yeah, that's how we conduct our classes, at least for what I know on our department.
Okay, thanks, Ranji. So, ano pa rin, yeah, we experimented with the quarter system also last year. And so now we're back to semester. Okay. There are other people in the room whom I don't know personally, but if you would like to, I mean, we'd be happy to listen to your own experiences. We still have a few minutes. If there's anything you want to share, anything you want to ask, please feel free to unmute your mic, turn on your camera. Yes, Jenny. Go ahead.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon. My question is, I think what's going to happen would be the case, because I saw earlier in your presentation that there's a resource in terms of an online assistant while the teacher is teaching. But I think in many cases, it's just going to be the teacher facilitating all of the, the students in the site and also online. So would you have any tips for the teachers who would really be doing solo? I mean, having to also do the work that the online assistant is supposed to do. Would you have any tips for us as we prepare to do that soon?
If you can't enlist the help of one of your students, I would probably point to something that Raul was saying, Raul and I were saying, but you might have to limit the number of channels that you have to manage. So one thing at a time. Now, if you have to lecture them, ignore the chat first, and then when it's in other words, and then when it's time to have a discussion or Q&A, that's the time you can look at the chat, or you can open the floor up to your students. There are also there's a tool that Jess uses, which, sorry Jess, what's the name of the software you use for your slides?
AHA Slides.
AHA Slides.
Yeah.
Which
subscription based, but it's not so bad.
Yeah.
It allows a lot of interactivity.
Right. And actually I find it's better than things like Mentimeter because it's all in one. It can do word clouds, it can do polls, it can do mga interactive quizzes, it can run different types of media. So I actually much prefer that. But yeah, as Jess said, it's subscription based. You would have to pay for it.
Although in that aspect, if you were going to subscribe to Mentimeter and Kahoot and all the others, you might as well subscribe to one that does everything. So if it's a consideration in terms of cost, then masulit na siya na you pay for that one thing that does all the other things in one.
Yeah. So thank you. I hope that was helpful. Are there any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I actually had one more.
Yeah.
Because I realized that, of course, there's going to be a camera inside the classroom. I wanted to ask if, and also taking into account audio, I just found it might be a little bit challenging if, for example, you're going to transition from, let's say, the chair and then the board, and then would it be okay if, for example, you're just stationary in the chair so that at least you're able to see your Zoom students and also your on-site students? Would that be okay for camera purposes and also for audio purposes?
Well, I don't know that there's a right answer to this. I think that I see your point. Definitely, it makes sense to sit so that your online students can see you. I think that's partly why in the room that I was describing to you earlier, there's a camera at the back also, so that the speaker can actually move around and point to things and maybe interact with the audience a little bit more, and still be seen. by the people on Zoom. In the absence of that camera at the back of the room, yeah, you could, I guess, do that. I feel like, it goes back to what Mark was saying about one of the audience is going to be privileged when you have two audiences like this. So I feel like sitting in front of your computer and talking to both audiences will privilege the people who are online. So maybe this is a good case for the station rotation. But maybe you spend a little time with the people online, and then at some point you say, "Excuse me, I'm going to talk to the people on site." Or yeah, so maybe something like that. I know that in our CS21A classes, they were doing a lot of they would coach people about how to program while on Zoom. No? So I am trying to imagine what it would be like, because when we do this on site, we literally go from person to person. So if you had people online and you had people on site, you would really have to kind of split your time. I think even
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. I think even for the on-site classes, you've actually employed the help of student assistants also to make sure you get to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have volunteers. Buti na lang our students are very helpful. So we do have volunteers. One of the things that we do is to stimulate that. I mean, on site we would still have the volunteers, and they would help us go from student to student. We would now put them in breakout rooms in smaller study groups to help each other discuss similar things. Ayan, yun na yung the best we can do in this.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mark?
Well, I just wanted to say thanks for having me here also, and it's actually quite nice knowing that everybody is as stressed out as I am about this whole hybrid learning thing. You spend so much time on Zoom, you tend to forget that others are going through. But maybe, and everything that we're doing in my school, it's an experiment, right? It's we're not sure whether this works, but maybe just to share, when the pandemic started and we had to pivot right away, but we made a conscious effort that, okay, we were saying teaching before technology. That became the mantra. Consider teaching first. So I think, as one of you said, it had to do with just keeping the learning objectives in mind. But the way we're going to try to do it, and I can tell you in like 3 weeks whether it works or not. But it might not be so much about learning objectives, but about learning modalities. And what I mean is that I think one of the difficulties that we're encountering is also because of the way we've been taught to teach, which is very teacher-led instruction. Especially, I used to work at the college in Ateneo also. So I was a lecturer. So I mean, the idea was that our classes tend to be teacher-led. Of course, in some schools there are big class sizes, and so when it comes to hybrid learning, the problem then becomes, how do you make that simultaneous, which we know is not going to be easy, and probably might not be a good idea, especially if the teacher-student ratios are kind of big. So, when I mention teacher modality, what we're trying to do is kind of like shift the mindset that when we think about a class, you're not just thinking about what the teacher is imparting, but you're thinking about how the students are actually learning. And the station rotation model I thought was interesting because it basically says the same topic, the same theme or subject can be taught in 3 ways: teacher-led instruction, collaborative learning, and self-directed learning. It's the same topic. In other words, if you imagine the 3 units divided according to those different ways of learning. So your attention is no longer on delivery, but on learning. The reason why I thought that was interesting was because if you just look at those 3, then the teacher-led instruction is the lecture, diba? You can't do that only on campus because what about the guys online? And what if people get sick and have to be absent? So definitely, teacher-led instruction has to be online, diba? But collaborative, which actually might benefit from face-to-face and all, parang you can have that both synchronous, you can have that both on campus and online happening simultaneously without the weight of trying to make everybody experience the same thing because they're now learning from each other rather than learning from the expert. And then the last part, of course, is that parang like it's also designing units or topics or whatever in such a way that you're actually encouraging independent learning. So the tricky part and the hardest part actually is changing the way we teach. Because I think it's true. Parang, although people talk about high flex and hybrid as simultaneously online and on campus, it's never gonna be simultaneous. But one will always, it's natural. One will always take. And what if the gamble is that? What if you address that? What if you don't try to be simultaneous, but you design learning in such a way that you can still deliver it? It'll be different from the way it was pre-pandemic, but perhaps that's the way you apply the technology. So that's why I thought I would just comment on the return to learning objectives, because parang I think the challenge for us here is not just what technologies to use. It's how do we change our teaching, which is of course not the easiest thing to do.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think that's a really useful comment, especially in the case of Min in Holy Spirit, where they said that they're under-resourced and they don't have the types of technologies at their disposal that other schools might have. So Min, maybe this is, again, it's easier said than done, no? Pero but maybe this is an approach that you can consider as an input to your own planning. Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, I think we have 1 minute left, and I'll just use that minute to say thank you so much to everybody who participated, and most especially those of you who shared your experiences and asked questions. I'm really glad that that there was all this exchange of ideas, and it wasn't just me talking for an hour. Thank you for joining us at this ALLS lecture, and hopefully we get to see you again in the future. Maybe we can have a follow-up of this 3-4 months down the line, and let's see how everybody's doing. Mark, I hope you don't mind. Maybe I can invite you to give us an update on how your experiment is working out, because I think that would be very interesting. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Didith.
Yes, and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.